controversial stuff. I mean, music always been played in, like, my nan and granddad, big music people, my mum and dad, big music people, although not really my taste in music. But so music's always been a heavily pushed, I suppose you could say, when I was a youngster.
Mm.
But I suppose my taste in music stemmed from visits to my nan and granddad's and listening to my auntie's records. And probably a bit subliminal at first,
Right.
because a deep love for roots reggae, and was never really 100% sure where it came from, because it wasn't a family tune. It wasn't music that was played by my family directly. But one of my aunties was in the late 70s heavily into roots reggae. And I think visits to my nan and granddad's at weekends. My uncle had Down syndrome, and my granddad used to play my auntie's records to him, and he'd just sit and all heavy roots reggae and just proper. And my uncle would just sit there and just rock backwards and forwards and be totally chilled and relaxed, and he loved listening to it.
Yeah.
And I think so, and that was probably from about 7 or 8 I was hearing that, but I wasn't. So I suppose it was kind of subliminal, because I was hearing it but probably wasn't understanding it at the time. And, like, obviously back at home, was just listening to all the usual sort of music that kids listen to, chart music and all that sort of thing.
Where was home, Nick? Where we talking? What part?
So all the families from North London, but have moved out. I was brought up on a council estate right out in the sticks in East Sussex, in a little place called Netherfield, which was a part of gypsum mines. Or the council estate was built for the gypsum mines years ago, and so, but we ended up there. So not far from Battle and Hastings, and so in that area.
Your nan and granddad, who were playing this music and you're on, were they up in London? Were you going up there to?
No, this was my mum's sisters. So my mum's mum and dad, and they were from North Kent, like Tunbridge, just before Tunbridge Wells. So yeah, so my auntie, my mum's got 1, 2, I don't know, about 6. Hold on, I'll get this right, shouldn't I? Since we're doing it on thingy. About 4 sisters and 1 brother. But the brother, like I say, was unfortunate to be with Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so the sisters obviously all were younger age than my mum. And yeah, so I heard their music, you know what I mean? And that was like I was always drawn to what they were listening to at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So on visits, like I say, but a lot of the music was being played from my uncle, to just sort of for him to sit there and enjoy.
And so that's we're talking like late 70s into the early 80s.
Yeah.
So you're growing up with that as an influence and those different sorts of music. Can you remember your first kind of the record that you bought as you got a bit older? And yeah.
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me first record that I bought.
Nobody's going
to. I can tell you. See, now this is an example of the times. First record bought Adam and the Ants, Kings of the Wild Frontier. That had been about 1980, 81.
Yeah, I think so. I remember that, but I can't remember.
But yeah, so. But I mean, around that time, I was just before I started I suppose starting secondary school, it was like the ska thing, two-tone, because one of my younger aunties was into all the two-tone stuff. So that was sort of really leading the way, as it were.
And so you got that as well. And then when did you first start going out? Can you remember what clubs did you go? Clubs around there? DJ?
Well,
Oh,
No, I mean, obviously, being a lot younger than you old chaps that have gone before me on this interviewing business. Um, Secondary school, 84 was when music all changed for me, I guess, because that's when the Breaking film came out and Beat Street came out. That was like that changed it all for me, if you know what I mean. That all of a sudden chart music and everything else just went out the window, and I was obsessed with breakdancing and electro music, and so I started digging into that from 84, 85 onwards. So then DJ wise on the radio would have been Mike Allen
right.
on
Okay.
Capital 95.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, but I couldn't always hear it because where we were living,
Just on
although
the
we was
reception.
a high up place, so we was pretty lucky on Fridays and the weekend at the right times of night. I could tune my radio in to London stations.
Yeah.
So hence, like then it was. I was obsessed with Mike Allen's show, and yeah,
And then, do you start collecting music at that point? You get yourself your first.
yeah. I mean, it was just odd bits and pieces then, but I suppose as the breakdancing thing moved into more of the hip hop, like 86, 87, then it was, yeah, then I started to buy stuff, like Houdini and when Public Enemy's first album come out, and yeah, that's when I started to buy it. That got me into buying vinyl, but I only had I used to use my dad's record player to play tunes on and what have you, and if I could get him off it, as it were.
And then, did you? Because you at that point you as well. Were you going into to see some of these?
Yeah, it started to. Obviously, it's getting near the end of secondary in school, and that starting to go with mates to like always chasing to try and see hip hop acts. If you know what I mean, it was always a lot of my friends at school and that were into what were they into? Crap, really, that they all went to see. And yeah, me and another mate used to just try and jog on up and see anything decent hip hop wise.
And so that took you through the late 80s into the 90s, watching bands.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the moment I suppose it got better once I left secondary school and then I started driving.
Yeah.
And then due to work, I was driving around London a lot. So then you get to see all the flyers all the time and seeing mates and things. And yeah, so then, but it wasn't so much clubbing. It was more just chasing when, when the hip hop act was playing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I mean, I've done all the, like, obviously local clubs and what have you. All the dance music at that time was big, but I was always still chasing the hip hop, as it were.
And how long did that continue to take us through to, where we
I mean, I suppose what's the word I'm looking for? That once I started listening to electro and the breakdancing stuff, I was obsessed with DJs, as in, like the DJs scraping it up and mixing, and not DJs on the radio, just purely the DJs that were making the music. So I suppose the obsession with wanting to be a DJ started around 1984.
Mm-hmm.
To which I think I've told you before, my mum and dad, bless them, bought me a mixer.
Yeah.
Without the decks. So, but like it was all a plan to build it up, but it never happened. It just, how things go. You just carry on doing stuff, and then come 88 when I left school, and then started 88. Once I was 17, yes, about 88 and driving, then everything, I stopped buying records because it was easier to buy a cassette and play it straight in the car rather than buy an album, record it, put it on. So vinyl sort of stopped then. Just every now and then I'd just buy the odd one or two, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So 88 on to 90-ish, I suppose. was a bit of clubbing, like we used to go to the Africa Centre, and then Brixton Fridge once Soul moved to there rather than the Africa Centre, and some parties around some dodgy fields, and the acid house scene and all that sort of thing. And then I suppose it all changed again in '90 when I met Iris, and I had to grow up a bit, I suppose. so the going out wasn't as regular, but then we'd go out to places that were, better, I suppose you could say.
And if I can, it does make sense. And if I can, then from there, you're working, you're getting your family going, and so on, and then you end up in Portugal. So I know I'm squeezing quite a bit in, but you end up in Portugal.
Yeah.
How long ago was
it? So yes, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, Iris and I got an offer to do a job out in Portugal. Obviously, our kids are all grown up, moved away. So we came down here for a week, looked at it, loved it, thought we'll have some of that, and moved out here sort of literally 3 weeks after we'd gone home, and we've been here ever since. And sold our house in the UK and plan to start a new life here, as it were.
Yeah, and obviously you're still here, and your DJing picked up after you lost Iris, and so that turned.
It's then speeded the obsession up, I suppose. So music has been a big thing with both of us, as it were. Always, concerts and just buying. CD collection is ridiculous, and cassettes is ridiculous. And like I say, every now and then we buy records when we were out places and stuff. But lost Iris. Someone strange, I can't even think who it is now. Someone talked me into going on Facebook for some reason. I went on Facebook, saw some Thames FM posts, started listening to Thames FM, started speaking to Kelly, found out we had a big thing with electro music and what have you, and the Arsenal, and floating around in the same places at times and what have you. So then, of course, led to speaking to you.
Yeah. Remember it well.
And I'll tell it, it's not quite right, is it? Because just before, after losing Iris and not really knowing what to do with myself, I suppose, I decided to buy my decks.
Yeah.
So I mean, we cut all that bit out. That's probably the most important bit, isn't it? I bought my decks in 2020, August 2020. I started buying a few records again, started buying a lot of reggae again. And as I say, then Facebook, Thames FM, talking to Kelly. And you know what Kelly's like? One night he said, come on, I've seen you post a couple of things on Instagram. You're a DJ, come and have a go. And
brilliant.
And here we are.
Yeah. And I remember Nick speaking to you that first time when you were getting your show together, and all of that. And I think it's very important to give Kelly the props, man, because without we wouldn't.
As I've said to you before, without Kelly and you, I don't know quite.
Without Kelly, I wouldn't be talking to you because I wouldn't have been on 10.
Yeah. So, and without Kelly's enthusiasm and drawing me in, I don't think, I wasn't in I'm not in a great place now, but I wasn't in a very good place then. And you and Kelly really helped. Well, and the music really helped.
I'm glad we did, Nick, because to be honest, what you've then done is build up what you now do, which is excellent. So, you've got a show, Nick's CuTz, which is on a Saturday night on Soul Roots Radio, and you've managed to develop your own distinct style of music. I'm going to have to say, because we haven't got that much longer left, so I want to try and see if we can get through this, but we'll be fine. But can you just tell us what you see your show as being? What are you trying to do in your show? And then also, what do you think you're going to be bringing along to the boat party to play to the people there? But take it your own way.
Well, for the boat party, I'm thinking Kazakhstan folk music, because I know that really gets people moving. And I'm very fond of that style of music. So, but I'll probably bring a bit of street soul and lovers rock as well.
Yeah. But as I was saying, Nick, what? Oh man,
sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Brilliant. But when your show, what would you see it as being? What are you trying to put out there on your show?
I just play the music that I love, and after that, which is a lot of street soul, because that was a heavy influence, like from '88 onwards. That sort of, and definitely once you hit the '90s, hip hop. For me, hip hop finished sort of pretty much 1990. The best 2 years, '88 to '90 for me with hip hop, and I became more into the street soul. Probably didn't realise it was street soul at the time. Just thought it was great, But that whole using the hip hop beats, the bass, and the step up from lovers rock and everything, because like obviously Iris and I were big lovers rock people, and yeah. So the radio show is just, I've become a vinyl addict, Paul.
Yeah.
And I'm just constantly looking, not for rarities, but just constantly looking for stuff that I've got on mixtapes or that I can remember, or stuff that just suddenly things up, and I think, yeah, I remember hearing that. And
I'm gonna have to, because unfortunately we're running.
I've run over time. Knew that would happen.